Joshua Dobbs has done some really impressive things, but on Sunday night against the Broncos, will he be able to do it from the pocket? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You like that? 3, 1, 2, 3. You like it?
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Luke Braun. And if you are new, it is nice to meet you. This show is available anywhere you find your favorite podcasts, anywhere from the podcast audio platforms like SiriusXM, which we are partnered with. You can also find the radio broadcasts of all of the Vikings games, all of the games, depending on your plan. You can also find the show on YouTube or Amazon Fire and Roku. Just download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. Thank you so much to the sponsor of today's episode, which is PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Today on the show, it's Friday, which means we got your bold predictions at the end of the show. Also doing our prized picks. Thank you to PrizePicks for all of that. But before I get into it, I want to go at one of the major sort of talking points with Josh Dobbs, who will get to start again. Jaren Hall looks like he's going to be ready to go. By the way, in terms of injury report, he's been upgraded to a full participant in the concussion protocol. KJ Osborne has been a full participant all week. Typically with the concussion protocol, that means he's going to be good to go. The real mystery is whether or not Justin Jefferson goes. He has been limited all week. That makes it a very game time decision, and it kind of feels like the sort of thing where they will figure it out. But they have had this sort of very methodical ramp up with him and using like the 28 one-day window and all that. So I have no idea if he plays or not. Don't look to me for that prediction. That's not the kind of thing that I do. But was kind of looking into the Broncos defense a little bit. Not deep, not like I wasn't like watching tape and going all the way in, just kind of looking at the way that some other mobile quarterbacks have produced against them. And in particular, just looking at rushing attempts, right? Just how often do these guys run around? And for Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Justin Fields, Jordan Love, all of these guys have fewer rushing attempts against the Broncos than they do against most of their other opponents. The Broncos seem to be willing to contain. Now, Mahomes did get out there a good amount in their first game against the Broncos. And then in the second one, he had the flu, so that one might be a little bit weird. But the rest of those guys still exist, and it implies to me, and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong if you're a Broncos fan and you're watching this, which if you are, hi, welcome. Thank you for coming. It implies to me that the Broncos are going to want to prioritize that, right? They want to, play contain and keep these mobile quarterbacks from getting outside the pocket. And even if I'm wrong about that, because that's a pretty flimsy prediction based on flimsy evidence, that's not really what I'm trying to prove to you here. I'm just trying to set up the question of, would Dobbs be able to handle that? If the Broncos do a good job of cutting off the rush lanes, can Dobbs still function? I made a whole Patreon video about it, and the reason I did that is because of a conversation that I was having with somebody about it that sort of evoked that idea. Well, he's a running quarterback, and that never lasts in the league, and you got to be able to do it to pass from the pocket and play drop back quarterback. And in that conversation, it didn't sit right with my instincts. My instincts were like, he does kind of feel like he can do it from the pocket. I felt like he did do it from the pocket from the Saints. It was kind of the whole thing that I came out of that game with. And so I went and I did a big film study thing on it. And what I found sort of backed up where my gut was, which is that Dobbs can play from the pocket if he just needs to like if this game comes down to whether or not Josh Dobbs can go 1, 2, 3, 4 through a read in a reasonable amount of time, that's not going to be an issue. Like that just will not be a problem. If it comes down to being perfectly accurate into a lot of tight windows, yeah, then I get a little more concerned, because while Dobbs his accuracy is like better here than it was in Arizona. And part of that might just be that, you got some guys like Hawkinson is in some senses an inaccuracy eraser. And if JJ plays, he's a great inaccuracy eraser. But just by being, having a large frame gives you a better catch, a better like miss radius, right? And maybe there's like this great coaching thing that's going on that we'll find out about later or whatever. But it's still not perfect. And for one, there've been a couple misses in each of the last couple games that are like, have nothing to do with the playbook and have nothing to do with like the timing or anything like that, where the ball just comes out wrong on him. And he did it in Arizona too. I think sometimes he just sprays him sometimes. And there's also a lot of times, especially with Hawkinson, I've noticed this, where it's just a little behind him, or it's just a little bit too far out front, or it's just a little bit too high. It's like just not quite timed up properly. And the reason for that is fairly understandable. And it is a familiarity thing where you're just not used to throwing to that guy's gate. Like Zach Ertz's gate was different, when you were throwing to him at the beginning of the year. So when you are trying to judge, especially on like crossing routes or things that are going like east to west rather than north to south, you're trying to judge, okay, this, I'm throwing this many yards, that's going to be this many steps. How far will he get in that many steps, right? And you're not doing that calculus like literally in your head, you're feeling that. So you're just using like this sort of spatial judgment. Professional quarterbacks will still put it on him reasonably enough, but when the windows get really, really, really tight, like on that great Alontae Taylor pass breakup in the Saints game, where if the coverage is good, a good pass that isn't perfect will still get broken up, and the only way to complete it is a perfect pass. And when you don't have those judgments down, it's harder to achieve that. So if the game comes down to that, the Broncos just cover everyone, blanket, man up, and win all day long, could be a tough day, and they'll have to find a way to run on that team. But that's the other thing is, can the Vikings run on the Broncos the way the Dolphins did? They are the most similar team to the Dolphins that the Broncos have played since that game. And the Broncos learned a lot of great lessons from that 70 burger, right? Like they definitely pulled out of it and learned some things and changed some things. They're not going to come out of a game where you got 70 hung on you and not make a couple of changes. So I'm not expecting anything like that. It's more of a question of, all right, here is something else that is like this. Now let's put your adjustments to the test. What do you got? And from an academic sense, I'm like really curious about that. And I don't really know how it's going to go. Also because the Vikings run game isn't that good, right? Dolphins have a great run game. The Vikings run game has a whole bunch of problems. So not going to be as big of a challenge, but it's the same style of challenge. And that piques my curiosity. But with Dobbs, the accuracy is one thing. The ability to play from the pocket, the ability to go 1, 2, 3, 4 is there, right? The footwork to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, flip your hips, 3, 4, check down. Like that happened in the Saints game. And so I have faith in his ability to do that. And when I did the Pocket Patreon thing, with patreon.com/LukeBrownNFL, right? By the way, you can watch that. I like purposely took out all of his scramble plays to make sure I didn't get distracted by the eye candy. But like that threat still exists. And when pass rushers, like the Vikings have struggled with this a lot, right? When you're playing contain in your pass rushes and we're being like, no, stay in the lanes, you got to be really careful about this, it slows you down. And it just gives you that extra half a beat, and that can be really helpful as well. Just the threat of you, even if they take your legs away, they still had to spend something to do it, and what they spent was time. Even just a fraction of a second might make all the difference. So, can he do it from the pocket? Yes, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's just going to stand back there and carve everybody up. Guys have to get open too, and we don't really even know which guys that is. So we'll find out, I guess. I want to do my PrizePicks prized picks, as well as the bold predictions. We got all kinds of great stuff coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks Daily Fantasy Made Easy. We're going to go very deep on a whole bunch of examples in the next segment, but here is how PrizePicks works. You pick 2 to 6 of your favorite players. You are not filling out an entire lineup. You don't need to go with like a kicker or a defense or whatever, unless you want to. There are kickers, I guess. I'm going to do a kicker this week. PrizePicks has been a blast. I've been having tons of fun with it all year. All you got to do is pick more than or less than their PrizePicks projection. So it's you versus the house. You just got to be smarter than PrizePicks. If you're smarter than PrizePicks, you can smash all of those together and either get them all right or maybe all but one right if you do a flex play, and you can get bigger payouts that way as well. So go to prizepicks.com to get started. And in particular, you can go to prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl or use code LOCKEDONNFL, all lowercase, in the app for a first deposit match up to $100. They've got yardage totals, touchdown totals, fantasy scores, if you want to just stick to like fantasy purism. Once again, get a first deposit match up to $100 at prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl or use code LOCKEDONNFL in the app. Thanks a million for making the Locked On Vikings podcast your first listen of the day. For your second listen, and if you're on YouTube, you don't have to lift a finger to do this. Go check out the Locked On Minnesota Sports 24/7 live stream. Locked On Minnesota Sports YouTube channel. It's basically, it's like your background TV. It is a 24/7 Minnesota Sports, all podcasts. This show is on there. Locked On Wolves, Wild, Twins, etc. And the Locked On Minnesota Sports stable of content as well. Go check that out. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't lift a finger. It's just going to take you right there after if you're watching when this premieres, which happens at 8 o'clock Central every day. Let's do some PrizePicks prized picks. So for this, I usually pick 4. This week is no exception. And because of all the stuff that I talked about last time, I am going to throw my lot in with less than 5.5 rushing attempts for Joshua Dobbs. This feels wrong. This feels like it shouldn't happen. On the PrizePicks website, you can actually click on a little icon in the box, and it will show you the last few games and whether or not they beat that mark. Dobbs has rushed for 6 or more attempts in the last 4 games, and I am saying this is going to be the time when he doesn't. And I think that's kind of part of it. Like, the Broncos see that and they say, okay, this dude likes to scramble, right? Like, they see the crazy touchdowns and they see the scramble out crazy plays, and they say, okay, we do not want this dude to do that. And we've been practicing against Russell Wilson all season. We can figure this out, right? So I think they are going to do a good job of containing. And I think that I do think that if the Vikings are going to win this game, Dobbs is going to have to do it from the pocket. 6 rush attempts is a lot, so I'm tossing a less than in there. I also have Josh Dobbs more than half an interception. Look, man, this dude has gotten away with murder a little bit with some of the inaccuracies, especially the ones that go high. He had a really gnarly one against the Falcons. He had one that felt like it was going high against the Saints. It was tipped a little bit, but I don't think it was tipped that much. Like, I think it was still kind of a bad throw. And both of them fell harmlessly to the ground. One of these days is going to end up in a safety's lap. And this might be the week. So I feel like there's been a little bit of or guys just not catching the picks that he throws, right? I think there's still a little disaster potential with Dobbs, so I'm going more than half an interception. Don't confuse this for me saying that I think Dobbs will do a bad job, though. Less than 5.5 rushing attempts might not even be a bad thing. It might just mean he's sitting back there and carving things up and he's protected well and he can throw all the time, right? But the interception it feels like something that's going to happen. But I like Dobbs. I do. I like him a lot. And especially considering the circumstances and all that. And I think especially as he gets more familiar with his receivers, we can start to see dividends on that as well. I just felt like these two, negative though they may feel, just felt like the most compelling marks from the PrizePicks projections. Elsewhere in this game, I'm taking the mile high kicker thing, 6.5 kicking points. So that's extra points and field goals, of course. So 2 field goals and an extra point. We get that more than, which is what I'm going to hit. Again, this is going to be the mile high thing. The dynamic is it is just easier to make kicks, right? That doesn't have a lot of bearing on short kicks or extra points, but on longer field goals, that might be the difference, right? Just because of the altitude, and also because field goal distances will change. So my understanding of the way that most teams nowadays do their like kick it or punt it or go for it on fourth down kind of decisions, they will matrix these things out based on a projected success rate on all of their deals. Will the fourth down go for it happen? Will we make the field goal? If we punt, will we get favorable field position? What are the odds that we, do a touchback and we only got 20 yards versus the odds that we pin them, right? And it takes all that, puts it into a matrix, not unlike what you'll see with like the Twitter bots, right? I think there's a little more that goes into them that's like specifically tailored to the team, like they'll have different field goal percentages versus the bots that use more universal data. But those data will be adjusted when you're in mile high, and crucially, the field goal distance and the field goal probabilities will go. You change the success rates in that very complicated matrix, and you say, we're going to go up 5% because we're at mile high. And like so many go for it decisions suddenly get overturned, and like punt decisions suddenly get overturned where you go, yeah, but maybe we can kick it because we're only 49 out. And that wouldn't be a great thing to do, when you're at Lambeau Field, but here at mile high, maybe that's a better thing. Think about it. If you're looking at a 52-yard field goal and you say, okay, well, you've got a 45% chance to make this or whatever number you put on it, and then you look at a 4th and 6 and we got a 45% chance to make that or whatever number you put on it. Like if those numbers are close, and then you say, yeah, but we're at mile high, so we're going to put 5% extra on the field goal, that's going to make the whole system go topsy-turvy and you're going to kick more. So 6.5 kicking points for Greg Joseph. And then the last one I have is for Jerry Jeudy, more than less than 3.5 receptions. That just feels low. Reception stuff on PrizePicks feels like it doesn't know that the Vikings blitz a lot and that there's just going to be a high volume of completions. And the quality of those completions gets limited, and that's kind of how the defense has been working. But there's going to be completions. So I feel like reception stuff and pass completions are always a pretty good place to look. Again, if you want to join me, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL or use the code LockedOnNFL. Get a $100 deposit match. But I know that these stat lines, these vanilla ideas that are perfectly reasonable, reason, that's not why you're here. You're here for the bold predictions. That is coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. DoorDash has been unbelievably clutch. Also, it's been a great way for me to explore the kind of hole-in-the-wall joints in my area that I never would have stumbled upon otherwise, that are maybe not on the main road, off the beaten path, but have great food, local spots, locally owned, small businesses, the kind of places that you feel good supporting, like you're part of your own community. You can find all of that stuff on DoorDash. And if you download the app for the first time, you can get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. Just download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. Once again, that is 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. Subject to change, terms apply. Oh my God. Oh God, it's time to get bold. Oh, is it so time to get bold? It is your bold prediction segment. I love this part. Favorite part of the week. Love wrapping out the week this way. So here's how it works. You guys sent me your bold prediction submissions. You guys send me like 100 of these every week, and I absolutely love it. Keep them coming. You guys are getting so creative. Then I pick some of my favorites, and if any of them hit, I get punished. The first one, let's go to last week's, and let's check on which ones, if any of these hit. First one came from Jack Broughton, who said the most field goals by one kicker in a game is 8, and Blake Groupie would kick 9, which includes his career long. Nope. Did they kick once? I think they got like one field goal or maybe 2. What was the final score? Even it was like weird. It was 11. Yeah. So there was 19. Yeah. Because they went for it twice. They got one field goal at the very beginning. That was it. Too bad. Yannick Eckhart said that Alexander Madison does the Chimera and scores 6 rushing TDs. Nope. Instead, he walked away with a concussion. That's how it goes sometimes. Speaking of, on his way through concussion protocol, not feeling great about his chances to play. I think this is Ty Chandler's show. Just, concussion protocol being less than a week is pretty rare. So we'll roll without him, I guess, for one, and then hope he's back for the Bears game. Also, Caleb Evans, I didn't mention, he's also day-to-day on the subject of the injury reports. Shadow Flame says that in Minneapolis Miracle-esque fashion, the Vikings will win on a game-winning touchdown with 10 seconds or less to go. And I stipulated that you must be on the wrong side of midfield at 10 seconds for that to be truly Minneapolis Miracle fashion. I don't want one of these 3-yard passing touchdowns at the end. That's too normal. We didn't get there. The Hail Mary at the end for the Saints was close in a couple of ways, but not quite. For one, had to be a Vikings win for the bold prediction to work. For two, had to be on the other side of midfield. The Saints threw from the 48, so they were just barely on the plus side of midfield, so that didn't hit either. And of course, it didn't work. It was an incomplete pass. So if you overturn those 3 things, we would have had it. WKC says that Josh Dobbs would be responsible for at least 4 turnovers, but the Vikings would still win the game. Nope. Vikings didn't turn the ball over once. How about that for your key to the game, how the Vikings can win? Don't turn it over. Simple as that, right? It's analysis. Eric the Red said there'd be a triple doink. Love the energy. Did not get there. And Red and Purple said that the Vikings will score 4 touchdowns and that the first letter of the last names will spell haha. So you'd have like a Hawkinson and then an Addison and a Hawkinson Addison. First touchdown was Ty Chandler. So immediately broke that one open. But, that's too bad. And then we had a Dobbs rushing touchdown. Did have a Hawkinson. So it spelled could. So you got that. Let's move on to the Denver game. Peter Larson says that there will be more total yards made in field goals than passing yards in this game. I love this one deeply because it made me think about the game and like production in a way I've never thought about it before, which is how many passing yards do you need to get into field goal range for the field goal itself to be worth more than the passing yards? Like if you start at the 25 and you pass for 40 yards, let's say, that puts you at the 35-yard line, which would be a 47-yard field goal. So that worked. But any less, or any more, if you get to like a 45-yard field goal, and also all of that had to be passing. So this has to be like a all passing thing, or you have to have some 60-yarders in this. This feels like it might actually be impossible, which is fascinating, but not like technically impossible. It's perfect for the bold predictions. I love that this gave me a thought I've never had before. Zachary Hayes said that the Broncos will have a horse. They have a horse at the games before they ride on the field, I think. Somehow a horse gets on the field during the game. I'm not going to check this, by the way. We're rolling with it. Horse gets on the field on the game. If they do not have a mascot horse and you are wrong about this, then that just makes the prediction bolder. And I personally am fine with that. That would be a lot crazier, if just a wild horse wandered onto the field in a Broncos game. But otherwise they let the horse loose. I feel I must stipulate, however, that a horse, if they do like a salute to service thing with an army captain riding on a horse, no, that doesn't count. This has to be a loose horse to me for this to truly be a bold prediction. Otherwise, it's the Broncos brought a horse out during halftime, whatever. That's like saying there would be a Ragnar at a game back when he was a mascot. No, this has to be a loose horse, an uncontrolled horse has to be on the field. Rob McNabb says, much like the Broncos' opening drive of Super Bowl 48, Russ will have a missed snap that results in a Vikings defensive touchdown. Absolutely love it. I don't think about that often enough with the Broncos and the Seahawks and like how they were rivals at one point way back when, before the Seahawks joined the NFC, they were in the AFC West. The Seahawks were, so they were rivals with the Broncos and then the Chiefs and Raiders and stuff. Much like Tampa Bay was with the NFC North, or think about that with like the Steelers and Titans. I think they were that way when it was the Oilers. I think they were that way too. Fun times with that rivalry that is now kind of defined by that blowout Super Bowl. This would be a very fun way to honor that with Russell Wilson, who is now sort of on both sides of that rivalry. Poa Laurel, sorry if I said that wrong, says 2 touchdowns off of jet sweeps for the Vikings. Yeah, man, fair enough. This could hit in a way where like they do it because like they've gotten teams in the past with the same play in the exact. I think that happened in 2021 where the Vikings scored on the same play twice on this, or maybe it was 2019. It was against the Lions. I remember that, where they like called a red zone play and then they called the exact same red zone like sail concept. It was awesome. I feel like you could hit him again with that, right? A little jet sweep on the goal line. We know Kevin O'Connell loves to dial up a jet sweep in short yardage situations, but we got to have that like goal line thing. I'm thinking kicking points. Ryan L says Vikings win by a higher margin of victory than Dolphins Broncos. I'm sure that Broncos fans, if you are still listening and you're with me, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sure you're so sick of hearing about the 70 burger, considering like that they have very much like turned it around and, kept their season alive. That is a 50-point margin. I looked this up on FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook, official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. I looked it up on FanDuel and they do not allow you to go this high. It caps out at 23.5 for alternate spreads. I'm sure you could call them and they'll take your money, but that 50.5 Vikings minus 50.5. That's the bet that you made. Put it in a parlay. And then Red and Purple, who is on absolute fire, says that the Broncos won the Super Bowl in 98, 99, and 16. Those numbers happen to be the numbers of Jaron Hall, DJ Wonnum, and Danielle Hunter, who will all score touchdowns on Sunday. So again, I love that it made me think about this in a way I've never thought about it before. For one, 2 defensive line touchdowns and the backup quarterback. I love the energy and I love this deeply already. I'm so in, I'm sold. What is interesting to me is that you could have gone with not the year the physical Super Bowl was played, but the year the majority of the season was played. We don't really talk about it as the 2016 Super Bowl. We talk about it as the 2015 season and the 2015 Super Bowl. For me, when I hear 2015 Super Bowl, I think about the Broncos. When I hear about 2016 Super Bowl, I think about 28-3 and the Falcons and the Patriots. So if you went with that, it would have been 15, 98, and 97. You would have had Harrison Phillips, DJ Wonnum, and the actual quarterback, Josh Dobbs. But you went with the backup, and I know you thought about it. I know you thought this through and went, I could do 15, 97, 98, and you deliberately decided to go with Danielle Hunter in the backup, and for that, I salute you, sir. That does it for this week of the Locked On Vikings podcast. We'll see you next week. See you after the game. So after Sunday Night Football, come to the Locked On Minnesota Sports YouTube channel with me and Sam Ekstrom, Luke Inman, if he's been extradited back into the country, and Ron Johnson will talk about whatever happens in this game. Rain, snow, shine, happy, sad, apoplectic, whatever you want. We will be there to recap what goes on. And then, of course, we got shows resuming again over the week. I'll be traveling next week for the holiday, so we will get shows out however we can, but prepare for them to get weird, probably, like they aren't always. I will see you guys all next week, and as always, Skull.